Okay, so is this working? Okay, so this is my rehearsal for the Shabbat, um, the Sabbath coming up. So basically, I'm going to introduce, just going to talk about how previously I spoke about, basically the last two messages I gave with this group is first of all, I showed you how uh, the scriptures that existed at the time of Yeshua, actually 300 years before he was born, but were still what was being used as the authoritative voice of scriptures during his time was called the Septuagint. However, uh, the what we have today in 2021, actually even since the 15th, 16th centuries, a uh, a big shift in which something else replaced the Septuagint, and that is known as the Masoretic text, written and produced by those who were against the belief that Jesus Christ, Yeshua HaMashiach, is the Messiah. So there's that, and I showed you in that the first message I gave a year ago how there are many. Uh, there are three instances that I presented to you last time, showing where uh, Yeshua was censored from being God, from being the Messiah, and other areas regarding his messiahship. So that was censored, and you can compare it again if you just listen to the message I gave from last year, 2020, March 2020. So we can see that there is a clear agenda to censor the fact of Jesus Christ being the Messiah. Uh, the message I presented earlier this year showed that it's not only him being censored; it's also some truths about ourselves. When we look at the heart is deceitful and wicked beyond all things, who can know it? We prove that it doesn't actually say that. It says that the heart is the man and it is deep beyond all things. And the only one who could know it is Jehovah. So now today I'm going to present to you another uh, piece of gold. I call them like gems of gold. I don't know if even that's technically correct, but anyway, another nugget of gold. And you can do this yourself. If you go to qbible.com, you just search up, I'll provide a link in the Septuagint on one side and the Masoretic or King James Version. Pretty much 99% of all Bibles come from the Masoretic. You can do this yourself with any book and look for these nuggets of gold that show you what the word actually said in the time of Yeshua and his disciples in the early New Testament church. What did the word say? And I think you'll be shocked as to how many differences and just how big those differences are. So I'm going to present to you another one of those differences, and it has to do with the Sabbath. In particular, uh, we're talking about the scripture where it says, do not speak your own words on the Sabbath. So that question is what I'm going to ask you today. Uh, are you not to speak your own words on the Shabbat, on the Sabbath? The truth just might shock you. As always, let's prove this, whether it's true or false. We can find uh, this teaching. We can call it a teaching in Isaiah chapter 58, verse 13. The context of this verse in this chapter is Yah Elohim is speaking to the nation of ancient Israel through the prophet Isaiah, and they were being occupied by foreign powers at this time. And God's purpose was to encourage them to remain faithful and to trust in Him. That was the context of this verse. So He's telling them what they should be doing in respect to many things, such as proper worship, uh, what is proper fasting, and how to properly observe His holy Sabbath. Okay, so let's read from the Masoretic text first. This is the commonly held belief. If you turn away your foot from the Sabbath, from the Shabbat, from doing your pleasure on my holy day, and call the Sabbath a delight, set apart, honorable, and shall honor him, not doing your own ways. And we're going to stop at this point. I'm going to now look at the Septuagint, the same verse. It says, if you turn away, and you'll notice, I'm just going to share my screen, show you these two verses, and you can pretty much read what's going to be presented. So I'm going to now read from the Septuagint. If you turn away your foot from the Sabbath, so as not to do your pleasure on the holy days, notice it's plural. It's plural here, not singular, which I believe gives further evidence that we are to keep the Leviticus 23, the feast days, and not just the weekly one. And as we know, there are more than just the weekly Sabbath and the feast days, the high Sabbaths, but there are sabbatical years, jubilees. So I believe this verse gives more credence, more credibility to it being not just one weekly Sabbath. It's actually talking about there's a lot more than that. So when God says my holy days are my Sabbaths, he's talking about everything, not just the weekly one. Uh, okay, so continuing on, if you turn away your foot from the Sabbath so as not to do your pleasure on the holy days, uh, and shall call the Sabbaths, again, notice this, the Sabbaths, delightful, holy to Elohim, set apart. You shall not lift up your foot to work. Now, notice that it says, you shall not lift up your foot to work. It doesn't say your pleasure. It's talking about work, which harkens back to the commandment. The commandment in Exodus 20 says not to do our work, our employment, whatever gives us a living wage. And there's more, but we're going to stop there. We're going to look now at the word pleasure. When it says here, uh, doing your pleasure. In both versions, it does say pleasure. So how is that? How can we define this scripturally, biblically, and how do you measure it? Uh, Deuteronomy 12, verse 28 shows us an instance of this word pleasure. Beware and hearken, listen, and you shall do all the commands which I charge you, that it may be well with you and with your sons forever. And if you shall do that which is pleasing and good before Yah, your Elohim. So that is one expression of our Father's pleasure. And his pleasure, what he wants for us is for us to do all that he has commanded us. On the other hand, to do our own pleasure, or any human being who wants to do their own pleasure outside of what God wants, as expressed in Isaiah, is to do it our way, your way, and for the most part, disregard what our Father has commanded us. Instead, doing what is right in our own eyes, in our own judgment. Kind of like in the book of Judges, where it says everyone just did what was right in their own sight. They just decided this is good, that's bad, not relying on God and his Torah. Notice that this part of the Septuagint was omitted or removed from the Masoretic. It says, if you shall not lift up your foot to work, again, this was not included in the Masoretic translation in this section of Isaiah, again, which relates to the original commandment given in Exodus 20. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and shall perform all your work, but on the seventh day, which is today, the Sabbath of Yah, your Elohim, Jehovah, on it you shall do no work. Notice that no one is exempt from this command, not even the animals. And this is one way that we can do our part to keep the Sabbath holy by not working. Okay, so I should type that in there. So not working and nothing but our labor dishes isn't working. It's being clean. But I'm not saying we're gonna wash all the dishes in the house. Anyhow, continuing on, in Isaiah 58, it says here in the Masoretic, where we left off, if you turn away your foot from the Sabbath, I'm going to skip to the end of this verse, and shall honor him, not doing your ways, nor speaking your own words. So the words in brackets, your own, were added by the translators for them to make sense of this verse. So it says, nor speaking words. So you can take it one way, saying, don't speak your words, or don't speak words. So just be mute on this day. In either case, you'd be hard pressed to say this is a reasonable command. The Septuagint, on the other hand, reads like this: if you turn away your foot from the Sabbath so as not to do your pleasure on the holy days, again, I'm skipping to the end, nor speak your own words. No, it doesn't say that. It says, nor speak a word in anger out of your mouth. Nor speak a word in anger out of your mouth. So again, nor speak a word in anger. Do you see the contrast there? I think it's kind of glaringly obvious. Speaking your own words in the Masoretic versus speaking a word in anger. So now I think it is important that we look at anger. We define anger scripturally. So if we take the portion of the Greek Septuagint, because it was written in Greek by Jewish people, uh, by the Hebrews, the expression "speak a word in anger" in the original Strong's Greek could mean to cry in anger, not just talking at a normal volume, not crying as in tears or mourning, but more like a shout, a tumultuous, attention grabbing shout. People don't shout in anger to praise God. They do that to usually attack each other in the form of verbal attacks, complaining, divisive debates, being disrespectful, and out of hatred. When they translated the Septuagint, they took the original Hebrew handed down from Moses himself and translated those texts into the literal Greek. So the word here, speak, is possibly meaning to cry, so to cry out in anger. So it says, speak a word in anger, but I'm going to skip this bracket area for the Sabbath. I'm just going to say, I think it's important we define anger. If I take that portion of Greek, and we see here the word anger in Greek is orge, or possibly orge. I'm going to probably brutalize that, but orge. It has been used to mean impulse, wrath, passion, punishment, and vengeance. But in this context, it is better described as wrath, possibly rage. So don't speak a word in wrath or rage. Wrath is more antiquated. Rage maybe is closer to today's lingo. So it would be so easy for me to just wrap up this message right now and just say, don't be angry on the Sabbath. Don't speak a word in anger. But I think it's much more than that. Orge is used in terms of passion, not just regular, being upset. This is a more passionate anger. It is further defined as to swell up emotionally, stems from an inner mindset. So this is my own interpretation here. It's like someone constantly antagonizing someone. So think of somebody being in your face, cementing their bias of what they believe is wrong. To me, it sounds like someone who's really contentious. They won't um, they won't cut you any slack. It's not a sudden outburst or spontaneous, but rather fixed, controlled, passionate feelings. It is deliberate, targeted, premeditated. Okay, you know what? I'm going to omit that. I don't think that's my own opinion. Yeah, I do. Impression is that it is more passionate than just regular anger, uh, like when you swell up emotionally. Okay, so we're going to look at parallel verses in the New Testament that use the same word, orge or orge, in the context of speaking. So this is one of the sins of the flesh. This is how serious this is. Research the opposite. Okay, so that's not. Not going to read that. So Ephesians 4 3 4:31, verse 31 says, "Let all bitterness and wrath and anger," so again that word orge, wrath and anger and clamor and slander, "be put away from you with all malice." I'm going to read it from another translation. It's called the Source Translation. The same verse. It says, "Take off the clothes of bitterness, rage, orge, anger, shouting, slander. Throw them away." And this goes for malice too. So going back to the verse in Isaiah, are we just not to speak words? We can't have a vacuum and just do nothing, or to not speak at all. To not speak at all. Uh, so the point is, how then are we to speak to each other on the Sabbath? I think that's the next point I want to get to. The next point is, now we know, don't speak in anger. Uh, so how then are we to speak to each other? This is more of my opinion. This isn't scriptural. I mean, there are scriptures, but anyway, I think this is more of a kind of traditional kind of message. This part. So the answer in the next verse, it's in the next verse of Ephesians, verse 32. It says, "Be kind to one another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another as God in Christ forgave you," or as Elohim in Mashiach forgave you. The source says, "Be kind and compassionate to each other, forgive each other, just as Elohim through the Anointed One forgave you." There's a big difference between having a respectful debate. Actually, you know what? I could probably can probably just omit the source part, because same thing, isn't it? Big difference between having a respectful debate, as we do here, where the goal is to have an understanding whether those uh, arguing, whether they agree or not. And hold on, this is kind of a big run on sentence. There's a big difference between having a respectful debate and a personal attack. Okay, I don't need to. Yeah, respectful debate and a personal attack. The intent is to divide the other person's argument, or maybe even their reputation. Basically, they're out for blood. Another fine example, I'll just say not fine. Another example of orge being used is in Colossians 3, verses 6 to 8. "Count these, the wrath, the orge of God is coming." Stress that there's a big difference between the wrath of Elohim and our own wrath. Okay. Verse 7, "In these you once walked when you lived in them, but now put them all away: anger, wrath, orge." So you can see there's a difference between anger and orge. They're two different things: malice, slander, and foul talk from your mouth. And then in the source it says, "But in point of fact, you must get rid of all of these: anger, rage, bad ways, blasphemy, foul language." Okay, I don't think I need to reiterate that. I'll just omit that. It's just the same thing. Okay. And we're offered in the very next verses of Colossians 3 a solution. We're given a solution um, as to how we are to talk to one another. So, how are we to talk to one another? 12 to 15, the Apostle Paul gives us a method. "Put on then, as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, compassion, kindness, lowliness, meekness, and patience, forbearing one another, and if one has a complaint against another, forgiving each other, as Yah has forgiven you, so you also must forgive," or as Adonai has forgiven you. "And above all these, put on love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony." So I think that love is the driver, the engine, in order to truly embody those traits mentioned in the previous verse. I believe that without love, those traits would be insincere, those traits above. It's Ephesians? I don't even know. Colossians. I think it's Colossians. Peace of Christ, Mashiach, rule in your hearts, to which indeed you were called in the one body, and be thankful. So we can see that these character traits are on the complete opposite side of the spectrum of where wrath is located. So now we know rage is bad, orge, rage, wrath. So what about indignation, anger that does not lead to sin? So it doesn't mean uh, just because we're not supposed to be wrathful doesn't mean that a brother or sister in the faith won't correct you. So you know what, I have to write that down. Because we are encouraged to not um, be wrathful. Does not mean a brother or sister in the faith will not correct you or rebuke you or maybe even be angry with you. But when they do so, they will do it in a way to not personally attack you. In fact, they're angry at your sin. They're attacking your sin. It should be angry at your sin, not you. Like it's a personal attack against your actions, your attitude, what you did versus who you are. Yeshua HaMashiach could attack others because he could see into their hearts. As I mentioned in my previous message, that only God can search the heart. Who can know the heart? God can. And he could see into their hearts and their intents. Again, we can't do that. I can't do that. Remember that someone who may correct you, someone who is correcting you, isn't doing it to discourage you. Someone in the faith, I should say, someone in the faith is not, ideally, someone in the faith who may correct you isn't doing it to discourage you. Someone in the faith in the body, truly in the faith. I'm going to say truly because you don't really know. Someone who is, remember that someone who is truly in the faith may correct you, is not doing it to discourage you and lead you to be overwhelmed with too much sorrow. Um, they're speaking words, should be speaking words seasoned with love, not burning with rage or gay. We can speak in righteous anger, but if our anger is not righteous, this can be discerned. How? By the after effects, such as discouragement, humiliation, ruining one's reputation. I feel like I've gotten so far from my original topic, but again, this is more of the positive aspect of, okay, don't speak a word in anger. So what should we do? It shouldn't just be a negative, right? There has to be something to fill it. By contrast, the wrath of God is not only righteous, but it is like a pathway that, when taken, yields good results. Okay, that sounds so cliche. How do how do I change that? You can speak in righteous anger, but if your anger is not righteous, you can tell. You can tell. What do you mean you can tell? You can discern this. How? By the after effects, the consequences. If the person's discouraged, they feel humiliated, if their reputation is ruined or affected in a negative way. By contrast, the wrath of God, it's not only righteous, but it's like a good pathway. When you take it, it brings good results. Okay, yeah, it does sound so cliche. Um, I'm just gonna leave it at, by contrast, the wrath of God is righteous and yields good results. So for example, correct, to humble, to bring one to repentance, to put an end to evil. Those are examples. So God is righteous, his anger is right, his purpose is for the betterment of others, unlike most people, most human nature. Not like our not like the purpose of most, I have to qualify that. Not like what am I saying? Not like the purpose of human nature, of most human nature, most who operate under human nature, either nature. It's mostly, again, self-motivated. We know this already. Self-motivated and self-centered. If we don't have the spirit of Yah, for the most part, we're not looking for the good of others. Those not in the faith, I should say, those who trust in their own judgment. Those kind of people, those types of people are not looking for the good of others. God's thoughts are not like our thoughts, and His ways are above ours. Okay, I think we know that. I don't need to mention that. It's kind of a given. So I'm going to delete that. Many people keep the Sabbath. So going back to my original topic, going back, many people who keep the Sabbath, a lot of Messianics, Seventh Day Adventist Jewish people, they use Isaiah 58, verse 13, to say you can't talk about a specific topic. For example, anything not to do with the scriptures, meaning that you need to speak 100% of the time the word of God of the Bible. They place restrictions on themselves and others. I'm going to say unfair, unreasonable restrictions, really unreasonable, things that you are allowed to verbally express, on things that on things you are allowed or not allowed to verbally expressed according to them. The words you say can't be your own ideas, your own opinions, or anything that's on your mind. This verse in Isaiah 58 has been used a long time to enforce this man-made rule, passing it off as if it were God's own rule of not speaking your own words. So I'm going to read this in brackets. I may not mention this. Let me just read it. Personally, during the Shabbat, as I mentioned, we shouldn't let our regular work preoccupy our minds, hearts, and tongues because spiritually we would then be working. Again, this is my own personal opinion. I also recommend that we shouldn't talk of evil practices of the world, such as conspiracy theories or something that just leads you down a downward spiral of depression. Not glorifying evil, but just talking about evil. I don't know. That's my own personal opinion. We shouldn't talk of the evil things of the world, uh, in a way that we are glorifying them, speaking of them in a way that makes them appealing. We shouldn't talk of sinful ways or anything that would lead people away from God. Again, these are my own personal opinions. I may not even include this because I feel like it's more of my own opinion. So don't speak your own words that would bring shame on the name of God. Instead, we should speak of them in the right perspective, speak of the world in the right perspective, and use scripture either. Um, what's them? We should speak of them. What do you mean them? Instead, we should use scripture to elevate the right practices. Okay, that makes more sense. I may not use this. If I speak or communicate in the Sabbath, like I'm doing right now, but I don't speak, I mean, it's not the Sabbath, but I'm just rehearsing, but I don't bring him glory because I'm speaking words of rage, and this ends up causing people to stumble in the faith, then, there's a big problem. So you can see the practicality of this is, and I can say the nicest words and, Jesus Christ is God and all the right things, but if I lose my temper right now on the Zoom and say, "Oh, you're an idiot," whoever on this chat, "You're an idiot. I hate you. I want to kill you," or whatever. Just don't have to say that outright. I could just say that, you know, just an attitude and a tone of anger, and it's not just indignation. It's really, I hate you, like with my blood boiling, and you know how it is. I don't even. I haven't really gotten angry in public. I mean, who does? But it's like those who are so unhinged. We could see them; they're triggered. So when someone is triggered, if you don't get triggered in the Sabbath, okay. So I know the Sabbath command. It says, "Remember the Sabbath, keep it holy." That's one of the most important things, one of the most memorable things about that command, as we read, as we know, memorized in Exodus 20. So I believe Isaiah expands upon this, on what it means to keep the Sabbath holy, besides not working, besides just not working. Ephesians 6, verse 2 talks about honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise. Excuse me. It is said that the fifth commandment is the first commandment with a promise, but this does not mean, I'm going to stress this, it does not mean it is the only commandment with promise. It's not the only one. There are other commands with promises attached to them. Notice in Isaiah that this verse connects to the keeping of the fourth commandment. So I want you to, please notice the positive consequences, or the blessings. I don't want to say consequences. Please notice the blessings for obeying this command. Also different. Okay. So in the Masoretic, uh, if you turn away your foot from the Sabbath, from doing your pleasure, on my holy day and called the Sabbath, again, weekly Sabbath, a delight set apart, honorable, and shall honor him, and not doing your ways nor speaking words, your own words, then it says here, this is the blessing. Then shall you delight yourself in Jehovah, and I will cause you, I'm just going to say Yah, delight yourself in Yah, I will cause you to ride upon the high places of the earth, and feed you with the heritage of Jacob, your father, for the mouth of Yah has spoken. Those are good blessings. What does Septuagint say? Is it a better blessing? I'm kind of interested. I forgot what this says. If you shall turn away your foot from the Sabbath, so as not to do your pleasure on the holy days, again, holy days, and shall call the Sabbaths delightful, could mean multiple, weekly Sabbaths, or again, the extended to the sabbatical years and jubilees and so forth. Holy to God, if you shall not lift up your foot to work, nor speak a word in anger out of your mouth, and here's the blessing, then you shall trust on Yah. So this could mean he knows that you trust him, you've proven yourself, or these actions will lead you to trust him more, your obedience. And he shall bring you up, continuing on. See, I'm going to just say continuing on. He shall bring you up to the good places of the land and feed you with the heritage of Jacob your father, for the mouth of Yah has spoken this. Um, Actually, it's not that big of a difference. I think the big difference is that he knows you trust him. Then shall you trust on the Lord. So it's not saying you will delight in him. You're trusting in him. So I've presented to you the truth about Isaiah 58:13. Actually, I'm going to omit this section here. I'll cause you to ride in the high places. What does it say here? Bring you up to the good places. Yeah, ride on the high places. Feed you with the heritage of Jacob. Okay, I'm going to just omit. I'm going to stop there. We will stop there. The rest of it is the same. It'll be the same. We can see, it says, you shall delight yourself in Yah. So, okay, that means you delight in him. Okay, that's good. But no, he's actually saying, then shall you trust on me, on Yah. You've proven your trust. You've proven in one way through your keeping the Sabbath that you trust me, and I know that uh, that you do trust me. Okay, and we're gonna stop there. So I presented to you the truth about this verse in Isaiah 58:13 about the Sabbath, and I know this is something that I feel like has been. If you didn't know about this, and the way I was before this verse, before I knew the truth about this, I was very, not that I was more careful, it was just very restrictive of what I could talk about, and to be honest, the Sabbath became more of a burden. So I'm going to just read the rest of what I've written here. So I presented to you the truth about Isaiah 58:13. Personally, Previous to knowing this, what I knew in the Masoretic, I'm just going to speak for myself because I can't speak for anyone else here. I knew it's a burdensome command, but as it is, the truth set you free, as Yeshua said. Truth sets you free. I hope the words of Yeshua HaMashiach are more real to you when he said that I thank you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, that you have hidden these things from the wise and ununderstanding and revealed them to babes. Yes, Father, for such was your gracious will. Verse 28, come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, I will give you Shabbat or rest. Take my yoke upon you. Learn from me. We read in the Septuagint. You can read from the Septuagint. That's what Yeshua used in his day. If it wasn't in the Greek, it was in the Hebrew. They were the same words. For I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. So I'm just going to reiterate once more and repeat. It does not say, uh, it does not say what we originally thought, because I feel like I kind of strayed a little bit. I went through, um, you know, so again, for the Sabbath days, actually, holy days, it does say, um, so, so brethren, brothers, sisters, and Mashiach, remember um, what the word actually says. I should probably just copy and paste it. So let's remember, if you turn away your foot from the Sabbath so as not to do your pleasure in the holy days, and shall call these Sabbaths delightful, holy to God. If you shall not lift up your foot to work, I'm going to repeat that. I think I don't really think it needs a lot of explanation. It's pretty straightforward. It's just pointing out the truth of what it's actually saying. Let me repeat for emphasis. Let me read that section again. Isaiah, bring it home. It's simple. Um, I'll close with that. I'll just read it. I mean, just reading it alone is powerful in itself. It's not me really having to expound on it, telling you this is how we should speak. And although what Paul had advised is very good, but it's also important to know, that God's commands are not a burden and his Sabbath is a blessing. I think we really can really understand that it is a blessing because it doesn't say what this restrictive, Masoretic text is saying. It isn't saying it that way. Um, so it says here, nor speak a word in anger. If you turn away your foot, nor speak a word in anger out of your mouth. Okay. Then shall you trust on the Lord. Okay. So I'm going to end with that. My burden is easy, or my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. So let me read that section in Isaiah for you one more time, just to bring it home. It's not really my words; it's the words of Yah. If you turn away your foot from the Sabbath, so as not to do your pleasure on the holy days, and shall call the Sabbaths delightful, holy, set apart to Elohim, if you shall not lift up your foot to work, if you turn away your foot from the Sabbath, so as not to do your pleasure on the holy days. Again, skipping to the end, or speak your own words. Okay, why did I skip to the end? I should just copy and paste what it actually says. Let me look it up and let me look it up just to make sure I'm not quoting it. Quote this. So I'm just cleaning this up. Um, Again, there really is no time limit that they enforce there, but just to be respectful, I'm not going to speak for like an hour, 2 hours. I'm just gonna keep it brief, and then I think there'll be a discussion afterwards. It's usually what happens, and you know what? I'm probably the only person, or one of the only people that I know of in the planet who's doing this side by side um, comparisons, where you're looking at these texts, the Septuagint and the Masoretic, and you're looking for differences that are very can be very different doctrinally and fundamentally. So it says, if you turn away your foot from the Sabbath, so as not to do your pleasure in the holy days, and shall call these Sabbaths delightful, holy to Elohim, if you shall not lift up your foot to work, nor speak a word in anger out of your mouth, then shall you trust on Yah. He shall bring you up to the good places of the land, and feed you with the heritage of Jacob your father, for the mouth of Yah has spoken this. Okay. Um, what did if you turn away if you shall not lift up your foot to work? Okay. If you shall not lift up your foot to work, nor speak a word. Okay, why did I if you shall not lift up your foot to work, I feel like I'm or speak a word in anger out of your mouth. Oh, okay. I don't know why I repeated that section twice. Lift up crickets. Hello, cricket. So as not to do your pleasure on the holy days. Or speak if you shall not lift up your foot to work. And then what's the next verse? Nor speak a word in anger out of your mouth, then shall you trust on. Okay, I'm going to copy the rest because, again, these are not my words. These are the words of Yah. That's speak a word in anger out of your mouth. Then shall you trust on Yah, and he shall bring you up, and he shall bring you up uh, to the good places of the land, and feed you with the heritage of Jacob your father, for the mouth of Yah, Jehovah has spoken this. So that's all I have for you. Shabbat Shalom. And hopefully, this word blesses you. Certainly blessed me. I mean, there is a tendency, possible trap, where people can get a little lackadaisical as a result of this new truth and saying, this realization, saying, so we can speak whatever we want. No, I'm not saying we have free reign to just, do whatever we want and say whatever we want. No, it's saying we don't speak a word in anger, but doesn't mean we just talk about foolishness and just make this day like every other day. But again, we're not placing, God isn't placing restrictions on what we say in terms of, content. Yeah, we should be mindful of this time. We should use this time to speak good words. Again, uh, I already gave you some um, suggestions. Actually, they're not my suggestions, but in the New Testament, we can see the, I guess, the spiritual intent of this is the kind of way you should treat each other and also talk to each other. And these are pleasing words if brethren are dwelling together in unity, for speaking good words or encouraging each other, and sometimes even angry words at each other, but not the orge, the wrath, but indignation, correcting someone for their benefit, to bring them closer to Yah, to have them leave their sin, to hate their sin, and instead to do righteously. So yeah, I think there is a potential, danger where you, now that you're saying, oh, we don't, we can. It's not saying we don't speak our own words. It's just saying don't speak in anger, and which, although that is true, we also should not use that knowledge to just go and talk about foolishness and just, again, glorify the world, or um, we really should be have Christ live in us. Yeshua should live in us in the way that we think, the way the things that we say, the things that we do should reflect what he would be doing on this planet. So just because it's saying that we shouldn't talk in anger, in orge, in wrath, does not mean we then have free reign to just speak the way I want to speak. I want to just talk about foolishness, or basically not give God glory. Not that every word has to be hallelujah, praise God, hallelujah, praise God. I'm not saying that. We can see that this command is very much, reasonable. Don't work on the Sabbath. It's not just turn your foot away to do your pleasure. What is that pleasure? It's not just something that you like. It's specifically lift up your foot to work. That's what it is. If you turn away your foot from the Sabbath to do your pleasure, meaning doing your work. If your pleasure is gardening, uh, I mean, I'm not going to get into that, but I mean, that might be its whole thing on its own. But I mean, yeah, there are things that are clearly defined as not to be done. Besides, not doing your what you do to earn a living wage. We also remember the story where a man gathered sticks on the Sabbath to make a fire, most likely, and he was stoned to death. And that probably wasn't his what he does to earn a living, but it was something not to be done. Um, so again, the Sabbath can be a little um, can be vague to some people, to when they're looking at, okay, what can and can't be done. Um, we know that there's a command says, "Do not kindle a fire in the Sabbath." So perhaps that command of gathering sticks, where that person gathered sticks, perhaps it relates to the command, "Don't kindle a fire in the Sabbath," because what else would you do with a bunch of sticks? You're not going to eat them. You're going to burn them. So his intent is probably to burn them, and most likely would have led to him, kindling a fire, which was not to be done on the Sabbath day. So again, Isaiah isn't going to say every little rule you should and shouldn't do on the Sabbath. That's not what it's about. It's about God encouraging the Israelites at this time, and to steer them toward the proper conduct and observance and proper obedience, and in this case, proper Sabbath observance. So again, not working. I think we all understand that we're not going to do our daily, uh, whatever we do to earn a living wage. We don't do that. But what are we to speak? Not it doesn't say our own words. It says a word in anger, word in anger. So nor speak a word in anger out of your mouth, nor speak a word in anger out of your mouth. Okay, so that's it. I mean, I don't know what to say. I'm just going to check the time and see how long I've been talking. It's probably 40 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to take questions, and I'm going to imagine if I was listening, what would I say? I would say, you know what? That makes a lot of sense. God is a reasonable God, but if I'm going to play the, devil's advocate, as they say, I'd say, okay, but, you know, I mean, there are clear commands as to what should and shouldn't be done the Sabbath. So, um, I don't believe Isaiah was trying to tell us every little, the books, it wasn't, it's not the book on do's and don'ts. in terms of the Sabbath keeping. Again, this is when we look at the context, we can see God is just steering them or correcting them as to things that they were probably addressing the things they were doing that were wrong in terms of Sabbath, keeping the Sabbath, fasting, and other areas. But I think another potential question that would come up is, okay, so because it seems that a lot of people don't understand that the Septuagint, the Masoretic are just so vastly different, and why that is. It's like asking the question of, okay, I understand there's a Sanhedrin. A long time ago, was a Sanhedrin, and they required two witnesses to cite the moon. And there's also Hillel too. So what's the difference? I mean, it's just names, right? No, it's not. I mean, I think that's. I think it's a similar kind of misunderstanding that's going on. That people just think it's just a technical difference that one is called Hillel too, one is just Sanhedrin or whatever you want to call it, whatever was before the Sanhedrin or before the Hillel too, I should say. You have to do your research. You got to do your homework. You got to understand. Number one, like for instance, we know the calendar. This is how it was done in Moses' day. Hillel 2 did not exist in Moses' day. So this is an analogy I would use. Did Moses keep Hillel 2? Okay, that would be my question to you. And your answer would be like, of course he didn't, because Hillel 2 didn't exist. He was not born yet. Moses was before his time. And you'd answer your own question, because to say that Jesus Christ used the Masoretic is the exact same thing, because Masoretic did not exist in Jesus Christ's time until after his death. So Hillel too, again, did not exist in Moses' time because it was after his death. What did Moses use? The sighted moon calendar. We know this for a fact. If you do your research, you will know. So what did Jesus Christ use? What did the prophets use? What were they using? What did Moses write? It was the original, and the not in our modern Hebrew, in the Proto-Canaanite Hebrew, that the very first incarnation of Hebrew, how it was, developed over time into different kinds of styles. But essentially, it was written in Hebrew. And again, if you just listen to my message from last year as to the circumstances, as to why they had to translate it, their precious scriptures, the word of Yah, into Greek, again, it's because their language was dying out. No one was using it. It's like if we have the Bible written in Latin. Okay, let's just pretend. Let's just hypothetical. You're most people here are American. If the Bible that we use today is written in Latin and only in Latin, how can you read it and understand it if barely anybody speaks Latin in America today, or German, or whatever language? It doesn't make sense. You would translate the Bible, the most precious thing on this planet, into a language you understand and that you speak. So what language would it be? English, wouldn't it? So that's exactly what happened in terms of why the Jews had to translate their scriptures that were, again, originally in Hebrew. We know this for a fact, but had to be preserved in a different language that was actually being used. Greek in their situation there. So I guess the question is, all right, okay, I agree with you. They did do that. And, you can do your research and see that was written by 70 elders. And there's many myths about that. But why don't the original Hebrew exist? Like, how come we don't have those records? We don't have those writings. I can't read from that. I can't find Moses, penmanship and all that. Well, my belief, my opinion is that uh, we don't have those records, those scriptures, because they were destroyed. They were destroyed, most likely when the temple was destroyed, because I do believe they were in the temple. And we know that the Romans destroyed Jerusalem. I mean, the temple is destroyed many times, not just Solomon's temple, but also Herod's temple. And in those two destructions of the temples, those two respective temples, you can bet they burned their scriptures too. But Yah always has a way. Jehovah always has a way to Elohim has a way to make sure his word will not pass away, because that's what Yeshua said. He said, heaven and earth will pass away, but my words shall never pass away. Heaven and earth will pass away first before his words pass away. So people can burn the Septuagint and whatever, all they want, it'll always survive in some shape or form. It will survive. Um, so if people start to destroy King James Bibles and all the Masoretic texts, it doesn't mean that, that God's word will not persevere and will not continue. Because again, I do believe the purest form of his word as preserved in the original, what Moses had written, and the prophets, and all the authors of the various books exist today in the form of the Septuagint in terms of the Hebrew scriptures. Um, Again, I've been doing this research for about 2 years now, since the beginning of 2020. So it's almost 2 years. And in my channel is what I do. Uh, I made it my mission, my personal goal in life to finish this work, uh, comparing and contrasting line by line, word for word, uh, the Septuagint and the Masoretic text, and look for all the differences that are um, doctrinally different, that are fundamentally different, that you would say, okay, we got a problem here. We have a problem here. And I just pointed out one out today in terms of the Sabbath day, how uh, we are to speak or not speak. And uh, I do believe that, just using your common sense. I mean, I feel like a lot of people just have plain common sense that God, yeah, Elohim is a very reasonable God. If a human being who is very flawed can use discernment, has the discernment to just be able to judge that, you know, this word is a lot more liberating. This law is more burdensome in the Masoretic. You can't speak your own words? What the? Are you kidding me? I'm not keeping the Sabbath then. And if I say I keep the Sabbath, I'm not really doing it. I don't think anyone can honestly tell me that they're keeping the Sabbath according to Isaiah 58:13 with the full integrity of their heart, like 100%. Like, be truthful to me. Are you keeping the Sabbath because you're speaking your own words? Because it clearly says speaking words. Whether it's your own words or just words, you shouldn't be speaking your own words. So for me to just say gesundheit after someone sneezes, are those my own words? I would probably say, yeah, they are. Or if I share an opinion about anything, like this guy is so beautiful today, that's my own words. I don't think there's any way around it. There's no way around it. But then again, when we look at what it actually says, again, the Septuagint, nor speak a word in anger out of your mouth. Is it reasonable for God to demand of us on his special day that he set apart for us, a special day in which we uh, remember him, remember the Sabbath, we keep it holy, it's set apart, we use it to worship him, to love each other. Is it reasonable for him to ask, okay, you know what, forget that. I'm just going to go to a different example. Family gatherings, all right? People have fond memories of, you know, Christmas dinner or whatever, a family gathering where everyone's together. It's a family reunion. And the father, most likely grandfather of the family, is the head of the family. And the grandmother, they have one request. This is their one request. I think it's reasonable enough. Okay, let's say they said, I want you all to not speak anything that's not uh, about me and my wife, your grandmother, about how we everything we've done for this family. If it's not to do with me or your grandmother and everything good we've done, I don't want to hear it. People's faces will be like, what? So I can't talk about my job, can't talk about my kids, can't talk about sports. No, I don't want to hear it. Only talk about me and your grandmother. That's it. And everything we've done. If it's not about me and your grandmother, I want to hear about it. You'd say, you're kind of out of your mind, Pops. Wouldn't you say that? On the other hand, let's just say this is scenario B, or aka the Septuagint. Grandfather saying, okay, I'm so happy everybody's here. Thank you for coming out to this family reunion, this dinner we're having for this special event, this special anniversary, whatever you want to call it. But anyway, it's a family reunion. My only request for all of you, my sons, my daughters, my grandchildren, everyone here that's a family member, my only request is this: I don't want you guys to fight. Don't fight, okay? Can we just have peace? I want you all to get along. I think that's what God is asking here. I think it's very reasonable. And I think you can get a bit more of an idea of what is being asked of us. So, you know what? I think I'll close with that. I think that makes more sense. Rather just reading. I mean, it's good to read the scriptures, but I think I'm going to use that analogy. It's a very good analogy. So I'm going to type it up and just say analogy of a grandfather family reunion. So I'm going to say that. So analogy, family reunion, and grandfather has one request. Scenario A, Masoretic. Speak only uh, my own personal quotes, my own personal quotes, or something that I did for this family, something that I or your grandmother did. So that's scenario A. And scenario B, I have one request of you: just don't fight. Just, I, I don't want to hear any arguing. Uh, let's have a peaceful gathering. Let's have a peaceful gathering. No yelling, shouting, um, no fighting. No fighting. No more fighting. I don't want any fighting. I don't want to hear it. I don't want anyone bashing each other, verbally or whatever, physically. I don't want anyone to fight. Let's just all get along. Can we all just get along? That's it. Let's have a peaceful gathering. No yelling, no shouting, no fighting. Let's just all get along. But can we all just get along? Can we all just be a peaceful family for once? I think it makes more sense. It's a reasonable demand. This is a reasonable demand. I think, yeah. So when you look at it that way, we got to look at that. Yeah, we have to look at the command from that perspective. Is God, is he unreasonable, or is he reasonable? Because if we're really being honest with ourselves, are we really keeping the Sabbath command to a T? And I'd say, going by the Masoretic text, no, I don't think I've ever kept it to a T. Maybe one time where I was just talking scripture, but even then, I'm going to share my opinion of the scripture and say, oh, I think the scripture is great, or I think this is what the scripture means. No, that's sort of my own words. It's not the scripture's words, not God's words. So yeah, I don't think anyone has really done this, maybe except Yeshua, if we're going to go to the standard of Masoretic, because all his words were the Father's words. Or if you're a prophet and you're speaking the words of God, but no, God isn't unreasonable like this. He's asking us, uh, nor speak a word in anger out of your mouth. I think that's we can see he is a loving father, and his His law is not burdensome. Uh, his law gives us a lot of peace, peace of mind, and he is compassionate. He's understanding, and this command is in line with his character. So I think this command is in line with God's character, understanding, compassionate, and wise. Just wise wisdom, reason. He's reasonable. You can reason with him. And yeah, just how great is talk about King David, how I love your law, and I just meditated on it all the day long. I wondered to myself, why is he meditating on it? Until I started reading the Septuagint, I'm actually doing what he did, actually meditating on it, going, interesting. I mean, it's not like King David can look at the Masoretic and say, oh, yeah, this is what the Masoretic said, but this is what the Septuagint said. No, he just had the truth. So he's thinking about the truth only. He's not thinking about, oh, why did it say this? And, it said Jethro, or was it Jethro? Don't speak words of good or evil to Jacob. Oh, was it? That's not Jethro. It was the father of Rachel um, and Leah. I forgot his name right now. But anyway, the father of Rachel and Leah. And God spoke to him in a dream, said, don't speak, according to the Masoretic, don't speak a word of good or evil. Don't speak anything to him. Basically, it's what it said in the Masoretic. But when we read the Septuagint, it's actually saying, don't speak a word of evil to Jacob. That's what it says. So King David would then look at that. If he had that, yeah, I guess he would have that, a copy of that. He would say, interesting, don't speak a word of evil. So you think on that. You wouldn't think of the nonsense of the Masoretic saying that it don't speak a word of good or evil, because he literally said, you know, that I could do you harm. And some would say that's kind of evil. No, he didn't speak evil to him. He said, this is what I could do. He was giving him hypothetical. But because if he did break the command, you would know God would repay him. He would repay Laban. That's his name, Laban. He would repay Laban for breaking what he said, that he spoke a word of evil to him. Or he spoke a word to him at all, because it says, don't speak a word of good or evil. And then he spoke to him. So he broke that command because it was good or evil. I don't know. It was in between. Who knows? But he spoke. Basically, don't speak to him is what, going by the Masoretic, don't speak to him. And he spoke to him. So he broke the command. But no, he said, don't speak a word of evil to Jacob. And he spoke to him. And, King David was definitely a deep person. This message isn't about King David, but he was a deep person. He thought a lot about, the law, and for good reason, because, again, my art teacher, grade 11, he said that this word, I know a man couldn't have written it because this isn't how we think. Love your enemies, forgive your enemies. Like, what? Doesn't make any sense. Why would anyone do that? It's not the way we operate. If someone hurts me, I want to hurt them back automatically. I want to revenge on them. I'm not going to bless you. I'm going to punch you in the face and punch you harder than you punched me. That's the way we operate. But that's proof that this text, the Bible, Old and New Testament, the Torah, the Tanakh, the the Greek. I mean, it's all written in Greek, but I mean, the Hebrew, what Moses written, what has been written after Yeshua, is inspired by God. It's breathed by God. It's directly from those who God inspired through dreams, through visions, in their waking hours, when they're awake, when they're asleep, when it's all by His Spirit. His Spirit moved people throughout millennia. Because again, this text was written over millennia, and all saying the same thing, the same Spirit, the same, reiterating the same commands, the same holy days, the same God, and the same mission, and the same Messiah throughout. Um, I don't know where I'm going with this, but anyway, Yeah, his word is so very much inspired, and we can think about it and read it for eternity and not really fully, not just understand it, but really fully live it. And we do our best to live it, but and we understand that living it isn't just for us and what I want to get out of it, but it's more about the big picture and being united with God and and bearing each other's burdens and knowing our place in this body. Again, it's not that I'm the body. No, Jesus Christ is the head of that body that we are all members of. Something we forget, and how he was willing to lay down his life, and he did so. He didn't just say, "I'm gonna do this," and didn't backed out. No, he did it. And if we would have that same spirit of Christ, of Mashiach, of Yeshua, then we wouldn't hesitate to do the same thing. A true Christian will not hesitate to lay down his life for his brothers and his sisters. That's a spirit of Christ. It's not just loving each other in good times or whatever. It's laying down your life. He said, "A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another as I have loved you." It's not just a feeling in your heart, it's action. It's giving your life for each other. Whether it's just the things we do for each other and we're tired out of our minds, but we still take the time to listen to each other and care for each other, or if it comes to the point of martyrdom, to be like the prophets, to be like the apostle Paul, to be like Stephen, to be stoned to death, to be whipped and imprisoned and shipwrecked and beaten and you know beheaded and all these horrible deaths, horrible torture that they endured, and they were murdered. They were murdered, and in the West, we're like, "Oh, this is bad." To be persecuted, and we don't want that for us because we can see what's happening. What's trending in our society is censorship and persecuting Christians, and this should not be happening. This is the West, and we should have freedom of religion. And I do agree, there should be freedom, but persecution is actually good. It's actually good. And it's such a revolutionary statement for me to say this because what do you mean pain is good? Suffering is good? Those are bad. Those are unpleasant. We shouldn't go through those things. We should always just have, freedom, and everything should be happy with rainbows and puppies and butterflies. No, no, not so. Because, and this is why I say this, is because even God, when He purifies gold, you don't purify gold by just wiping it. You purify gold in the fire, and not just little fire, the hottest fire. That's the only way you can purify gold and all these fine precious metals, is through burning hot fire, such as persecution. And then, my mind is such that I keep wondering, okay, right, we're going to suffer because it says it is through much suffering and persecution you shall enter the kingdom of God. You can only enter by suffering and persecution. You can't enter just by, being in the lazy river and never being punished, or, you know, uh, punished, what do you call that? Wrongfully or not. We'd have to also look at, okay, in the kingdom of Elohim, when after death has been vanquished, no sickness, no more Satan, no more demons, no more war, no more. So where's the persecution then? And that's a good question. I really can't answer that. I don't know how it's going to be. Is it just going to be all puppies and rainbows and talking, elephants and lambs with lions, and kids with wolves, and babies, hugging snakes and all that? Like, I really, where's the persecution there? You may ask, and I don't have the answer for you. I'm sure there's going to be challenges, but it's not going to be in the form of sin. It's not going to be in the form of, when I say sin, I mean like the enemy and his corrupted ways of pornography and covetousness and murder and all these plots to destroy someone's slander, lying, and all this propaganda and Marxism and even things that communism, whatever it is, whatever ism that is not scriptural, that is not uh, agreeable to Torah. So, what is the challenge going to be? I really don't know. I can't say because we're not there. But even in a family, like notice this, even in a family where everyone loves each other, at least they should have an agreement that you love each other. You still have arguments. You still have arguments, and maybe that's what it is. It's like you may not see eye to eye and everything, or there's going to be issues, and so yeah, maybe that's the persecution. It's just the growing pains. Maybe it's being patient with people when you're trying to teach people the right way. And even Yeshua said, "Oh, faithless generation, how long will I be with you?" It's like that. It's not like he was sinning and getting angry at them. No, he was just simply expressing an emotion, and maybe that's what it is. And not that I don't know, but although it's true that the church, and I say that like that, the church or the believers, this body of Christ only grows in persecution, and it really flourishes when the more darkness there is, the brighter the light can shine. But if it's daytime and I light up a candle or whatever, flashlight, no one can see it. But in amidst great darkness, in the middle of the night, there's no moon and you can barely see the stars in a cloudy night, completely pitch black. Somebody has one lighter, you can see that from like miles away. I think that's how it works. I think that's how that works. The light shines brighter in the darkest darkness. So I don't know. I'm just kind of rambling on, but basically, yeah, how great the law of God is, how great God is, and how great Yah is. Um, yeah, you know what? There's always a pre pre presentation kind of jitters, and doing this really helps to get that out. Make sure what I'm talking about is nice and compact, and I'm not trying to push an agenda like, oh, believe what I'm saying. No, I'm just going to read the word and let God's words kind of interpret themselves. So I'm going to do this again tomorrow. This is going to be on the Sabbath evening, and then I'm going to present it Sabbath day. Um, but I just have to probably put notes as to where do I share my screen. So I'm going to say share screen, and then there's probably another portion. I'm going to share the screen is right at the bottom here. So this is actually probably like a 15-minute message. Um, okay. So I'm going to share the screen here too. Okay, so yeah, back to this one more time tomorrow, and I presented this a total of I think 3 times. First time was last year, just on my channel, or just rambling on and just kind of speaking, and then and then the second time was with the other Zoom group, and then the third time will be tomorrow, because technically it is the 6th day, so tomorrow will be the 7th day. And you know what? I used to be nervous about messages, but that's only because they're my opinions and my words. But this isn't my opinion. This is simply just what God is saying. So I'm just going to present it, but there's a way to do it. And I think I need to work on the energy I bring. It's got to bring more energy to it. I almost have to like listen to music and like dance. And then I bring it like, hey, everybody, Shabbat Shalom. Like, instead of being all Like, okay, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Are you not to speak your words? You know what I mean? Are you not to speak your words on the Sabbath day? Should probably kind of be more happy. Yeah, should probably smile a bit. I mean, there are things that presentation wise you can always improve. So I think that's something I have to work on. Just to speak louder too. Speak louder, and just that. Those are just fine tuning my style and make sure that I'm presenting this in the best way possible because it is the truth, but I'm presenting it in a way that people go, "Whoa, that was good." You know, I really liked the energy and everything. And yeah, the content was great, but the way you delivered it, like you loved it, you're passionate about it. And that's just something it's just not natural to me. But like, wow, everybody, look at this, baby. Like, who talks like that in a message? But yeah, I guess I don't know what I'm gonna have to. Maybe I have to listen to music at the same time. I don't know to be louder, but I want to be like artificially loud. But yeah, this is great. Like I should present it like it's my last day on the earth and go. You know what? Been reading this word for a long time, and this is what it actually says. And it's such a it's such a relief. I'm very relieved. That all this time in my life I thought it said one thing, and then God's like, nope, says this. I'm like, what? God, you're full of surprises. Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, he's full of surprises, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean it in the best complimentary way possible. Because I remember as a child, I don't know if I'm going to even talk about this, but I probably won't talk about this on the Sabbath. But I remember, yeah, growing up in the Catholic Church, I used to pray in the Mass during the Mass, and everyone's like, doing this and Our Father and all that. I'm like, you know what, God, what am I going to do next? Am I going to do this? Am I going to do that? I'm going to pick my nose. Like, I was like, if you're really good, you know what I'm gonna do next. I'm gonna pick my nose or not, or pick my eyes, or I don't know, do something funny. So if you're really good, you know what I'm gonna do next. Okay, what am I gonna do now? So I was like, I'm full of surprises. But that was just me being foolish as a child. And like now that I'm older, maybe it's like God's sense of humor. He's like, yeah, you're a funny kid. You think you're funny. You think you're gonna surprise me. Well, I got a surprise for you. You're gonna read my word and you're gonna love it. But oh man, I'm gonna shock you. I'm gonna shock you 20 years later. You're gonna go, "What? You actually didn't say that to not speak your own words? You actually meant don't speak a word in anger." I have no doubt you're God now. Because I always thought you're no one wants to say this, but I've always thought you're authoritarian and that you were unreasonable. Because as much as I wanted to say, you're a good God and your Sabbath is great, but I couldn't honestly say that you're really a good God and reasonable when you're saying don't speak your own words. I'd say that's a little unreasonable. You're not bad, but that's a little unreasonable to say you can't speak your own words. And I use that analogy about the grandparents at the family reunion saying, "All I want, my only request, my last dying request, is for everybody to just not talk about your lives or what you did at work. Just talk about me and your grandma and what we did for you." And everything that I said in my life, my book of quotes, I want you to say everything that I've quoted, or you can only say the words that I've ever said, or your grandmother. And I'm sure the family will go, "What? Okay, so we're going to imitate you and grandma, basically." It's going to be a very boring family reunion when you say, but no, God is saying, again, like my analogy of the grandparents at the family reunion, my only one dying request of all of you here, I just want you to get along. Stop fighting. Don't You guys fight way too much. Don't fight on this special day. That's all I ask of you. I'm sure a lot of the family would say that's a fair request. We do fight a lot. It's about time we have a peaceful family gathering where just get along and we put our differences aside. And yeah, we may not agree in everything, but we're not going to be at each other's throats. And we're going to respect your wish, grandfather, grandmother. So I don't know if I should open with that or should I close with that. I don't know. It's hard to say. Maybe I should open with that. I feel like it's a strong analogy because that's a real attention grabber, isn't it? I should probably open with that. Because for me to just dive in the scriptures, and as much as I love just diving in the scriptures, not everyone is like, yeah, let's dive in the scriptures. Some people are like, I don't know. I don't know about that. I'm not ready. I'm not ready. Don't dive yet. I just want to dip my toe in. So I might open with that. I say, I don't usually like to do this, opening with an analogy or a, as they call them, anecdote. I don't like doing that, but I'm going to do that because I think it introduces the topic way better than I originally planned it. So this is how it's going to go. And people love their family gatherings, whether it was a lot of people tend to gather on Christmas Day or whatever, anniversaries, weddings, and all that, funerals. But I probably will use the analogy to open. So I don't know, but I feel like it drives the point home a little bit stronger as the conclusion. But I don't know. I feel like when you get the feel for the room, I feel like a lot of people just want to hear the scriptures, like they don't mind doing that. But when you close it with an analogy like that, you really drive the point home. So maybe you finish strong with that because I mean, scripture is strong on its own, but when you put it into like a real life practical kind of scenario where people can understand, yeah, I love family gatherings, and the Zoom gathering is very much like a family gathering. That although we're not related by blood, um, like close blood. I mean, obviously we're all from Noah, but I mean, although we're not all like Dumond, I'm not Robert Dumond or whatever, whoever is in this room. Um, we are all a family in Christ. We're brothers and sisters, and to have a Zoom meeting and for Joseph to say, my only demand for you on the Zoom meeting, everybody here, nobody's accepted, nobody's exempt, only speak whatever I've written in my books, whatever I've ever said, and whatever I've ever done in my life, that you can speak. But don't speak anything else that is not pertaining to that. If you do, I'll kick you out of this room, basically. I'll go, I don't know if I'm going to last very long. I have a lot of opinions. I'm very opinionated. But on the other hand, if Joseph is saying, okay, everybody in the Zoom meeting, my only request for you or of you, just get along. Don't fight. Don't argue. Don't shout. I'd say, I think we do that every week, right? Pretty reasonable. So that's all I have for this rehearsal. Um, yeah, you know what? I didn't have this analogy before, so I'm very happy about this now. I might be, you know, it's like the more you work on something, the better it gets. The better it gets. Um, it's like when you practice a sport or whatever, music, something that you can improve at. Yeah, you practiced this song one time or you composed it, and the second time around, you learned, you know, that you can build on the song and make a chorus. And the third time, you realized, oh, I have better microphones and better equipment, and I can increase the acoustics. And there's a cricket in the room, and I can say, "Hey, cricket, do you want to be part of the ambiance?" Or maybe it adds to it. So yeah, there's always something you can refine and refine and refine. But that's life. Isn't life about growing? Like you keep growing. It should be about growing and increasing and getting better. But we can only get better and increase um, the better our relationship is with God and with each other. But if we sever that relationship, or if we put an obstacle in the way, like our sin or whatever it is, the cares of life. I was debating whether even to do this tonight, to do this rehearsal. I was gonna just do something else, But I said, you know what? I need to take this more seriously. I originally planned to do a rehearsal every day this week, but I felt like I don't think that's needed because it's not like I'm writing it from scratch. I'm just kind of fine tuning it. So, yeah, I really, I'm really reflecting on life a lot because one thing that is really bothering me, and people ask, "How are you doing?" And they say, "Oh, I'm great. You know, I'm healthy. Can't complain." That's usually my normal answer. But if someone really asks, "How are you really doing?" I'll go, "You know what? I'm glad you asked me how I'm really doing because I'm kind of disturbed." You know, what? What do you mean you're disturbed? You're a Christian. You believe in Yeshua, right? You're in the faith. Yeah, but the reason I'm disturbed and bothered, it's not because of anything I'm experiencing. It's when you when you learn of what other people are experiencing around the world who believe in the same Jesus Christ, Yeshua, HaMashiach that we do, and they're learning of him and they're reading the Bible and just simply existing, how much danger they're in. That in a lot of countries, this is illegal for me to even do this. What I'm doing right now is this is illegal. And if anyone ever found out about what I'm doing, what I'm talking about, I'd be put in prison and tortured and possibly murdered. But I can do this freely and no one gives a damn. They're not going to imprison me or torture me or beat me or murder me in this country. And their zeal is such that they're willing to give their lives and they don't care. Not that they don't care, but it's not like it's stopping them from continuing in the faith and learning of Jesus Christ. But us, we're so lazy. We're so complacent. And when I watched those two documentaries, Sheep Among Wolves, Volume 1 and Volume 2, I said, what? Like, there is a satanic lullaby that we've all fallen prey to. And a large part of that is not only the pop culture and the society we live in and the culture we live in North America and in the West, you know, Europe and wealthy nations like that, where everything is just so easy. But it's also the lack of persecution. It's also the way we live. And I'm talking about, you know, that we're not an agrarian society. We're not as cognizant of um, how reliant we should be on God to provide for us in terms of, you know, growing the crops, growing the fruit, growing the vegetables, growing the wheat. And then we have to harvest it and how disconnected families are now. You know, you can have a family eating together, having dinner together, but no one talks to each other. They're all on their devices, and no one talks to each other anymore. I think we're something's broken there. Relationships are so very cold and artificial, and there's no there's less warmth. Not no warmth, but there's less warmth. I don't think that's the way God designed for life to be, and we've really diverged so far from his original intention. So I don't know. I mean, how do I have the same zeal and same sense of urgency and same love and same bravery that those in the Middle East do, living in this country and this situation where we have all the time in the world, we have every comfort at our fingertips. Like, how do I preach this? How do I live this with 100% sincerity and zeal and excitement and passion? And I can answer that partly because I remember when all this started in 2020, January, from January to March, I was very, very paranoid to the point that I had a similar, not that I was in that same mindset that those in the Middle East are in, but it was very similar. It was a very similar kind of vein that there was nothing else in this world for me. Nothing else was important. Everything else was just nonsense. It was vanity. It was worth nothing to me. And maybe, I don't know, I can't speak for them, but I have a sense that that's the way they see things too, that nothing is bigger than Jesus Christ and seeing him again and knowing him and learning of him and making disciples. And not that I made disciples, I don't know if I made disciples, but like, how do we emulate Christ besides doing what he did, making disciples? You know, if you're a young man, you should have friends who are like minded. He was literally living with 12 other young men, like a gang of 12. I mean, 13 when you include Yeshua. Although he was their teacher, he was also their companion and friend. I mean, it's not like the relationship was like, oh, that's Yeshua and he's just our teacher and we're just going to hang out because we're the boys. No, they're all together. And they were, how you say, tight. I'm sure they were tight. You know, they were very closely knit. And to the point that you have, you know, it says in the Gospel of John, it says the disciple who he loved, and it says he was lying at his breast. Like, if you're not close with somebody, you can't just lie on their breast. One, you know, heterosexual man to another, you know, straight man just gonna lie on their chest. It doesn't make any sense. Like, I've never, not that I've never seen this, but the amount of times I've seen another, you know, red blooded Chad, whatever you want to call it, a very alpha male lying on another very, you know, straight male's chest. It's probably like one or two times in my life. And that's because I don't know what they were doing. I'm just like resting or I don't know. But very rarely you'll see that and they're both straight. But that's just the way things were. And that was normal and that's fine. Because, you know, Yeshua and his disciples did that. I'm not saying let's all lie in each other's breast, but I'm just saying that I'm trying to say is that, you know, if we really want to emulate him in his life, we got to do as he did. And that includes, yeah, having relationships with those who are like minded, meeting regularly, preferably living in the same community and dealing with each other daily, not just once a week or once a month or once every whatever blue moon, but really helping each other out and being intimately aware and involved with each other's burdens and challenges and uh, accomplishments too. We're involved with each other. That's a real community. And healing the sick, you know. There's a lot of reports of dreams and miracles and things happening in the Middle East to those who are, you know, being called by Yeshua HaMashiach. And one could say, oh, those are fake. But then if you open your mind and say, those could be real as well, that they're seeing a man in white and he's intervening in their lives at their darkest points in their lives where they're about to commit suicide or whatever, and they're just saved at that last minute. and there's a lot of miraculous things happening, and the church in the Middle East is growing so very quickly, and not just the speed, but it's also growing exponentially as well, and not some kind of super mega church. It's more like home fellowships and underground, very much like the New Testament church in the Book of Acts. It's not a commercialized, kind of power structure where one person gets all the wealth and they live like a celebrity in mansions and drive like BMWs and all that. No, it's organic, it's real, it's spiritual. At least from the reports I'm hearing, and yeah, they're being very much persecuted and in hiding. Yeah, I don't agree with everything that they kind of say in terms of, oh, if they want to rape me, I'll just let them rape me, and if they want to kill us, let them kill us. I don't agree with that because I don't think that's scriptural either. Although I also believe, yeah, Yeshua didn't say we should revenge ourselves and be actively, trying to kill people, but I also believe God gives us the right to defend ourselves as well. Because if that weren't so, King David and his men wouldn't have weapons. The nation of Israel, as they are known today, wouldn't exist either because they wouldn't have any weapons either. They'd be pacifists. America would just be invaded by the communists already. We'd have no nation that will defend itself. And even in the kingdom of Israel, they wouldn't have weapons. They would just have, like pillows or something. They wouldn't have arrows. They wouldn't have horsemen. And although, yeah, Yah Elohim fought for them in some occasions and, sent an angel to wipe out an army and hailstones and whatnot, but he still gave them, um, and let them participate and have to do things with their own hands, meaning wipe out specific nations according to his command. Not they just wanted to kill somebody. He actually killed this specific nation, specific person, specific reasons. This is what they're doing, etc. So yeah, there is a time to kill. There is a time to defend ourselves. But I believe followers of Yeshua should not be actively, trying to kill people. But we do have a right to defend ourselves. But we're not looking for trouble. We don't look for trouble. But I mean, common sense dictates that there's nothing wrong with defending yourself. Even a deer has been given antlers by God to defend itself against predators. They don't just simply get eaten because they have no way to defend themselves. But they're not out there stabbing and impaling wolves with their antlers. No, they only use it when they need to, when their back's against the wall. So I think Christians are the same kind of situation that, we should be preaching, we should be merciful to our enemies, we should pray and love on them. But, if they're trying to genocide us, we have the right to defend ourselves too. That's just that's just common sense. I don't know. I don't know why we're just let's just give up and never fight. No, I don't think that's how God operates. Because when He comes back, when Yeshua Hamashiach returns to this earth, He's not coming back with a pillow. He's coming back with a sword, and He's going to be dipped in the blood, and He's going to conquer. He's going to come back not a teddy bear, but a grizzly bear. He's going to come here to take over all this planet and all the governments and all the every country and every peoples. He's not doing so with peace. He's going to do it with war. He's going to just, it's not even going to be a contest. He's going to destroy it, all these powers that exist. So, yeah. So, how would you argue that? Those who live by the sword will die by the sword. We're not living by the sword. We're not actively trying to conquer anybody. We're just minding our own business and living peacefully. I don't think it's a, I don't think Yeshua HaMashiach preached a gospel of conquest through violent means. No, I don't believe that at all. He preached a message of peace, of love, and remember, he did tell his disciples, get two swords. Why did he say that? Why did he say get two swords if we're not to defend ourselves? Notice when his disciple used the sword, he didn't use it to defend himself. He wasn't being attacked. He's the one who was the instigator. Notice he was the instigator. Um, I think they captured Yeshua at that point, but he pulled out his sword, unsheathed it, and cut off the ear of the servant there. And Yeshua noticed that, if he continued and if he didn't stop him from continuing to use that sword, they would put him down. He would probably be decapitated at that time, or stabbed. He would be stabbed through the heart. But he told them, "Put away your sword." And the way he remedied what was done, he undid the damage that was caused. He healed that slave, the servant. He put his ear back, and it was working. And everyone was like, "Okay, well, I guess, how do you repay what he just did by healing him? We just let bygones be bygones. Let's take our prisoner and walk away and let them go." And they all fled. But if we're the case where, the disciples were being attacked, and this didn't happen, but hypothetically, so let's just say they were being attacked, would they then have the right to defend themselves? I would say probably so. But the prophecy was such, it says, I did not lose one. I did not lose one. We have the example of the Maccabees, and I have to research this, but I'm just going to speculate. I might get this wrong, but I believe that it was a Sabbath day, and I think they were not defending themselves in the Sabbath because it's a Sabbath, so they decided let's just not defend ourselves. But then they were getting slaughtered, so they realized, okay, you know what? Maybe in the Sabbath it's okay to defend ourselves if we have to. It's not against the Torah to defend ourselves on the Sabbath day. And even when they're building the temple, one hand they had I think a shofar, in the other hand they had a sword. Either a shofar or something to bricklaying, like a tool. They had something in one hand that was not a weapon, and then the other weapon they had a sword. So yeah, they were. Otherwise, Yah would tell them, "I don't want you guys to have swords. You're not representing me correctly. I want you to have a feather or some kind of, put a stick of honey or something, a healing instrument, not an instrument of death." No, that's not what he said. So Yah is reasonable. Again, we're not like other regular, or not regular, we're not like the rest of the world who is conquering and using violence to spread the gospel. No, that's not what Yeshua is about. But he's not about pacifism either, where we just lay down and just get murdered. I don't think it's wrong to defend yourself. It's not wrong to be wise as serpents, yet harmless as doves. Again, we're not using our swords or our guns and we're terrorizing people. No, that's not what it is. That's not what Christians do. We don't operate that way. That's not the way of Yeshua to inflict harm on people and instigate violence. We don't do that. It's all about love and peace. Really should be about that. But when there's no other choice and your back's against the wall, and the only option is death as last resort, you would then have to defend yourself or defend others' lives, or run away, or use a diversion. Basically, I mean, that's a last resort, is violence and hurting other people. um, Ideally you want Yah to protect you from all violence and all harm, because if violence was not prescribed by the Bible, I think it's a very controversial topic. It is, don't get me wrong. But if we're really being honest with ourselves, if violence was not something that God permitted, or if he prohibited violence altogether, like full stop, no violence, explain to me Samson. And he was a judge of Israel. Explain that to me. Just comment, tell me, oh yeah, Samson, no, God didn't, he didn't really approve of Samson. If he didn't, then he wouldn't have chosen Samson, and he wouldn't have let Samson kill 1,000 men with the jawbone of a donkey. He wouldn't have given Samson the superhuman strength to destroy that temple and kill everybody in there if he didn't approve of violence. Think of that. If God didn't approve of violence, Goliath wouldn't have been defeated and then decapitated by King David, or not King David, but by the boy, shepherd boy David. He would have said, "Oh, King David would have said, oh, Goliath, you're a humble man," or not that. He'd use his words, and they would just not use violence to solve things. No, no, it wasn't that way at all. many times. I mean, King David had his own mighty men, an army of mighty men. He had Joab, and things were, again. I believe violence is the last resort, but when it's needed, it is needed. There's a time for that. Um, but yeah, I do believe in the kingdom. There won't be any people hurting anyone anymore. There'll be no need for weapons of war. It's only a temporary thing that happens now because there's so much sin and there's human nature and people want to conquer each other. People want to you know um, they want to spread themselves as a culture or whatever it is. They want to take over the world, and they usually do it by violent means or some sinister way. Propaganda, all these different methods where people spread their themselves, whether it's a government or a country or whatever it is. People want to take over, whether it's land or wealth, power, whatever it is. People, it's never enough. People continue to want to conquer. But anyway, the point of this discussion, I mean, it's just rehearsal, but I'm so far from it now, and just reflecting on life in general and talking about this Christian like living and how we grow by persecution, and their mindset in the West is like we're so lazy and so comfortable that most of us are oblivious as to the suffering that those in the faith are actually going through, and they're being imprisoned unjustly, they're being beaten, they're being murdered, they're being tortured, they're being sexually abused, they're running for their lives. And you know what, they don't run away from it, they don't pray that it goes away, they embrace it because they can see that they feel the presence of God, and they know God's working with them, and they see very much a lot of miracles occurring in the midst of all that suffering. They feel the presence of God even greater, in a greater way than most of us ever will in this you know bubble society. We're just protected in every sense, in everything's been provided. It's like we've been spoon fed, and our awareness and the power of God is not that it's not able to have effect, but it's like our faith is less. Their faith is more because they don't hesitate to give their lives for this cause. But when we reach that same point and that same urgency, and we're also persecuted or whatever, we have the same zeal in some way or fashion, we're able to get that. We'll also see the same things. We would see these miraculous things happening, and we'd see exponential growth in the body. And yeah, I don't know what else to say about it, but and then talking about violence again, I don't believe Yeshua ever preached for us to ever use violence as a way to spread the gospel. Never. He encouraged us to love our enemies, to pray for them. Um, but he also told his disciples to get two swords, and he said that's enough. We didn't get 12 swords. They didn't each have a sword, and their modern equivalent is a gun. It's not like they all came ready to kill. They just had it as a countermeasure so that they wouldn't all be murdered. Because if they saw, this group of presumably 300 centurions with the high priest and all that, saw that these 12 men were unarmed, they would just probably kill them all because there's no, we could just walk all over them. But since they had two men who were armed, they're like, okay, you know what? They might do a bit of damage. And we also heard the rumors of this man, this Yeshua HaMashiach, that he's been doing miracles. We don't know how strong he is. He might, you know, send a mountain to land on us or something. Who knows? He might vaporize us with his powers. I don't know what he'll do. So we have to be ready. Um, so in either case, that was a preventative measure. Um, but again, we can argue that violence was also not prohibited, full stop, that there was a correct context in which it was used. Again, self defense, or if God is the one commanding for whatever reason. It's because explicitly his commands for that to be used. In Samson's case and King David's time and whatnot, but and in all those different situations. But I think it'd be very dangerous for people to just say, "Oh yeah, God told me to do this," and then they start, hurting people. That's not, it's not of the spirit of God. It seems like the next time that'll ever happen is going to be, at the return of Jesus Christ. That seems to be the time it would happen. But for the most part, I feel like most believers are so very pacifist, very much pacifists. So they would never, do that, and rightly so. But on the other hand, to just allow yourselves to be murdered and all these things and not have a way to defend yourself, I think is also wrong as well. So I feel like, yeah, you do have people in America and they have their Second Amendment, and there's a right way to use it. There's a right way that law can be lived. You're not um, you're not using that in a way to take over or anything. You're just using that as a it's completely preventative. It is self defense, and it's a last resort. So that's all I have to say about that. It's a long rehearsal, isn't it? Okay. Man, didn't think it'd be like a heart to heart, but it turned out to be that. Yeah, it says the mouth or the heart. What does it say? The mouth and the heart. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So, I mean, that's what's been going on in my head for quite a while now, listening to all these things and the testimonies from the Middle East and what they're going through. And yeah, it sounds like a nightmare, but it does sound like a dream because, um, I mean, I don't know, I can't really speak for them. I never met any of them, but it sounds very biblical. It sounds like a continuation of the book of Acts. Like, people on the run, people hiding for their lives, and they're so very much excited, and their lives are being turned around, and they have a hope now. They are not afraid of death. They're not fearful of death. They're not afraid of persecution. They know they're following the path of Christ, which is, one of suffering for his name's sake and just living a life of integrity and learning of Christ. And yeah, maybe they don't have everything right, every single doctrine, but I think essentially the spirit of it is correct. That they have a love for God and they have a love for each other. And, when they're more obedient and they learn more and learn more, I don't think it's going to be difficult for them to adopt all the correct doctrines. It's really the spirit, it's the zeal and the love that they have, and the fact that they're willing to give their life. I mean, I'd say that's a lot harder for me to just have no fear and say I'm ready to die versus me saying, okay, I'm ready to stop eating pork or whatever it is. I'm gonna wear blue tassels or something like that. That's not hard. It's saying forget me. It's not about me. Um, it's not about what I want. They die to themselves every day because they're ready to die. If they didn't die to themselves, they would hold on to this life and say, you know what, I can't be caught. I have to hide and hide and just revoke this way of life. I just have to hide and protect myself. It's about self-preservation. It's not about spreading the gospel, making disciples. No, they still do it despite all the dangers that that are present, that are ever present in their respective countries. Man, you know, I'm glad I learned about what they're going through. I'm glad I learned about, Joel Richardson and the ministries they're doing in the Middle East. And I don't think I would know about him if it wasn't for the YouTube and their suggestions. So thank you, YouTube. Thank you for suggesting Joel Richardson. because fact was I was just watching Waleed Shobat and his explanation about the number of the beast, the mark of the beast, all that stuff, and in the suggestions, there's another guy talking about the very same thing, and I said, "What in the world? I thought Waleed was only one, but turns out they're like they know each other." I'm like, "Wow, isn't that something?" So, but Waleed didn't bring up the very intricate, intimate details of what is happening in some countries like Persia. I'm going to call it Persia, but and this movement of spreading the gospel and the good news of the Messiah is being spearheaded by women. Going that is very reminiscent of what happened in even Jesus' day, in his day, that all the disciples they fled, and the ones who stayed and weren't concerned with, oh, weren't you also with this man? Are you not disciples? Were the women. They were there through it all. They never left his side. And you can see how brave women are. I'm not a feminist or anything like that. I'm just saying, matter of factly, man, Yah really uses the weak and the foolish of the world to put to shame those who think they are strong and wise. And a lot of men, we think, we're physically strong, but we also think, yeah, spiritually we're stronger than women. But I don't know, these women, and they put me to shame. They don't care for themselves. They're ready to die, and a lot of them already have been abused and beaten up, and in a lot of ways they're like the walking dead, and in that they've suffered so much, but yet they still continue, and nothing I could ever experience, or at least that I've experienced, could compare to what they've gone through. Everything is just so stupid. I mean, oh yeah, I lost my job. So what? So what? So what? I lost my job or whatever it is. I mean, in comparison to what they went through, and like all their problems are just so very small and insignificant. Um, I'd say even the poorest and the most wretched of the people in the West are still a lot better off than those in Persia and places like that, where they're being persecuted and imprisoned just for their belief, just for reading the Bible or just praying or whatever it is, something so slight and seems so trivial. But just because there's a little bit of a hint, oh, you're a Christian or whatever it is, oh, you're doing something different than everyone else, and they imprison you, and then you're tortured and whatever, sometimes even killed. I mean, this is the reality that is happening. And, we can read it about it, we can read all about it, we can watch movies about it, but unless we actually live it ourselves, we really, really don't know what they went through. And I don't think we can fully appreciate all that until we live through it ourselves. And I'm not saying let's just all torture ourselves and live in a prison, but sometimes it helps us to put everything to perspective and to really, appreciate our blessings. And I'm not saying, they're less blessed. I think they're more blessed to have persecution. But I think that time is coming anyway, whether we like it or not, that we're all going to be persecuted, and we're all going to be very much like the pressure is going to be built. It's going to continue to increase to the point that whatever they're going through, I think we're going to go through that as well in the future. I don't know how soon that will be, but I think religious freedom is becoming a thing that we are taking for granted, and very soon, um, I think that will eventually burst. We won't have that anymore at some point. Again, I'm not trying to be paranoid and fear monger, but it's just something that it's actually something we should ask for. It should be. It doesn't make any sense to me, right? To a lot of people, like, why would you pray for persecution? Well, because you're more dependent on God. But why can't you be dependent on God without persecution? Well, it's just not the way we work. A person who's unemployed or makes very little money is forced to you know be more resourceful. But if someone makes $1 million, a year or whatever, they're rich. There's really nothing to motivate them to do better, to be more frugal or whatever. It's just the situation really puts you into that. A piece of gold will not be refined in a freezer. You got to put it in the fire. It's just the way things work. So I think that's what it is. It's just the way God designed us. It's the way human beings operate. If we're not actually in the fires of persecution, we won't be refined like silver. We won't be, you know, I'm not saying that it's impossible, but it's very difficult to just simply, replicate that and simulate the actual persecution that, the prophets went through, the early church did, and what Yeshua went through, and what people are going through right now all over the world in parts where, believing in Jesus Christ and reading the Bible and trying to live accordingly is very much illegal. And yeah, I don't know. It is, as they say, it is what it is. But I think we need to take a look outside of ourselves. And if we're not serious about this walk to the point that we're ready to die, and I talk to myself too, am I ready to die for it? I can't say I am, like, that I'm just willing to, here chop my head off. Like, it's not easy. I'm not gonna lie to you and say, okay, I'm ready, chop my head off. No, I'm more like, oh man, I want to be that brave, but I don't think it's just gonna happen overnight. It's gonna take more growth. Just like it's not easy for, I don't know, a pilot, a student pilot learning to fly a plane. He's not going to just learn it overnight. He's going to have to be trained every day. He's going to have to go through different tests and learn the ropes. So maybe that's part of it. When you reach that point and you don't care about your own life, you don't treasure it like it's, preserving your life is the most important thing. You're going to go, yeah, yeah, I made it. I'm like Christ now because I count my life as of no importance, my physical life, but eternal life is everything. Yeah, pain isn't, I don't think pain and suffering is ever pleasant. But when we can see the purpose that God is working through that pain and suffering and whatever the fires are, persecution, we understand His love for us, that it's not this life that He's placing the priority on and for us to try to preserve, but He's saying, no, I want your eternal self, not who you are now in this existence of right now in the here and now, but I want the son, the daughter I'm trying to turn you into and change you into, lead you to become in the future. This is all progression. You're not meant to stay a worm or a caterpillar. You're meant to become, to metamorph, to morph into me, to being like me. You created my image physically, but you're not really my image internally yet. You don't have my heart, and I'm trying to work that into you. And one of the most effective ways is through suffering. Unfortunately, it's just it's the way it is. I mean, I guess ideally he didn't want that because he put them in the garden. It's not like he said, "Adam, I'm going to whip you and put you in fire and make you climb a mountain." No, we did that to ourselves when they sinned. But ever since that sin, and they call it the fall of man, God has been working his hardest and pushing for that to be restored. He wants the restoration of Eden, restoration of that relationship. But because of the decision that our forefathers made and foremother, they, we've been paying for that ever since. So, sins and actions, they have consequences. And often the consequence of sin is suffering and death and pain. Um, I guess that's what it is when you come down to it. But when all that has been defeated, God is like, at one with God. It's just contentment, it's peace, no more death, no more suffering, no more persecution. But I don't know. I can't. I think the best analogy I can use is a family gathering, a family reunion, where everything is just good and you're loved, you're accepted, and you're united as a family, and you have no reason to fear. Nothing's going to make you afraid. Your things are provided for you, and God's way is being enforced. It's being taught, it's being lived, and there's no malice, there's no ulterior motives. No one is trying to hurt another person or try to take advantage of another person. There's no abuse. There's none of that. No perversity, or people's hearts are really for each other, and they don't think of their own, just of their own needs. They think of the needs of others. In fact, they put the needs of others in front of their own. They esteem each other better than themselves. That's really God's mind, including their enemies. They esteem their enemies too. I think that's the spirit and the approach we should take in those kinds of situations. Again, violence is a last resort, but before you resort to that, you forgive and you try to find a way for peace, as much as possible. And only then will the enemies know, these people are different. They're not like other people who, when you hurt them, they try to hurt you back, but they'll only defend as last resort because that's just reasonable. It's just reasonable. If you push them that hard, they will have to, you know, not retaliate, but they'll have to defend themselves. They're not gonna like full on take revenge on you. They're just defending themselves so that they can, you know, just just exist. Protecting their kids or whatever it is, protecting their life, whatever their community. That's okay. Nothing wrong with that. Self-preservation's okay, but um, I don't see a problem with that. But anyway, I'm like rambling like way too long. This cricket is also very talkative. It's like he's my special guest, Mr. Cricket here. All right, so yeah, this way of life is very. It's very. I mean, it's good, without a doubt. I mean, what other way is there? There's no other way. People have opinions. People have their own philosophies, but nothing really works because we've tried it. Whatever isms and different theologies, different philosophies, and they don't work. They only work to a T, to a certain point, and then they fall apart because there's really nothing in there that is eternal. There's no eternal principles. They're all man-made, and according to human nature, people just do what they think is right, and only God has those eternal principles that actually work eternally and and are constant. They are unchanging. They are as solid as gravity, the laws of physics, you know, maybe even more solid because they're spiritual. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. So that's all I have. Supposed to be a rehearsal, and I got into like a long heart to heart, but it's not a bad thing. It's good to reflect on that because I've been kind of asking myself that question, like, how do I become as serious as these people in the Middle East are being persecuted? Is there a way? And I guess the answer was when I felt that sense of paranoia and fear from last year, and I'm going, you know what? There's nothing else. And that same kind of sense of urgency led me to do this channel and to present the scriptures and the truth of the scriptures. But I haven't been doing it to such a degree that my life depended on it. Like my output is like kind of went from like one video a week or one every 2 weeks, or And then I started doing like one a day at one point, and then rarely would I do like two or three a day. But I think, what the goal is to complete Genesis to Revelation before I die. That's essentially what it is. If I can do that, what a great privilege it would be. I mean, just doing the first five books of Moses is good. And, I'm on Deuteronomy now. Didn't start it yet, but my next video is on Deuteronomy 1. So hopefully get started to do that next week. And yeah, I might take a break, but excuse me, the plan after Deuteronomy, I'm planning to do a kind of like a nutshell. I don't know why I call it the nutshell series. So I'll do like Genesis in a nutshell, the biggest differences in one video, put them into a compact thing and really drive it home. And like, whoa, these are huge differences. And then Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy really encapsulate that. Maybe even write a book on these first five books of Moses, the Torah, as they call it, and really give light to these truths and just publish it for free in a PDF or whatever. And then those who want it physical would have to spend money because it costs a lot of money to produce something physical. So I might do one just for myself. I don't think a lot of people want the physical copies, but if there is a demand for that, let it be known, comment, and all that stuff. But I want to do that, and I'll have to proofread it and everything, and make sure it's nice and presentable and all that, and it's very well organized. And I want to lean towards more an antiquated look. You look at the old, King James, and you look at the old ways that books were binded, hardcover, and the layout. So nothing flashy, just very simple and very much reminiscent of the old kind of ways that they did books. R.H. Charles and all the pseudepigraph apocryphal books, all those kinds of the way they actually printed it back then. Very simple, but nothing flashy, just simple yet elegant. So yeah, I mean, I want to do that and then just continue on. I might just do that as a side project, the book thing, but I want to definitely do the 5 videos, one on each um, book of Moses, and then present it in a way that is, I hate to say it, but entertaining, not just like a lecture, like a college lecture or some kind of, where you're just saying, oh, this is the difference here and there's that difference, and I'll really drive it home and say, wow, this is huge. There's a huge difference there, and then continue on, and to Joshua and what do you call it, the prophets, the writings, the prophets, and then I might take a break once I finish at the end of the prophets for a little bit, just to do again like a summary of the whole thing, and then move on to the New Testament. That would take probably not as much time, but I've kind of estimated how many years it would take me. I was thinking it might take me 3.5 years to do Genesis to, the end of the Septuagint, and then maybe another year to do the New Testament. But if I increase my output and really take this more urgently and really tackle it with more zeal, with more energy, I could, yeah, willing, it can be done in 3.5 years from when I started, which was last year. So 2.5 years remaining, I guess. I don't know. We'll see. I really have to increase my output like exponentially, because I do believe there's many, many chapters in the scriptures. I don't know how many hundreds of chapters there are, but if I do, I don't have to do a Google search. I'll do a little quick search here and see how many chapters there are, and then I would just divide it by how many days I can see this being done. Let me just do a quick, how many chapters in the Bible? Divide it. Take a quick look. Calculate. including the Apocrypha. I want to cover the Apocrypha as well. So that's going to be a little bit longer. The Apocrypha, looking at, Baruch and all that. So, how many books are there in the Bible? How many chapters are in each book? No, how many chapters in the Bible? 1,189. So let's just say, for sake of argument, let's just say it's, 1,500. Let's just say there's 1,500 chapters in the Bible. And if you do, like, let's just say, I'm going to say reasonably, like 4 a day, 375. Okay, you know what? That's not reasonable. Let's do 2 a day. 2 chapters a day, 750, divided by 364. It's about 2 years. So, yeah, if I did 2 chapters a day, uh, I could do probably in 3.5 years, maybe 4 years, the Old and New Testaments. I hate calling them that, but basically the Septuagint and the New Testament. Yeah, I guess that could be done. And I don't know. That's really, I think about that, especially when I was working, when I was actually doing my actual, my work to earn a living. I was thinking, you know what? Work is important, but I feel like I'm not really doing God's work. And then, when this all happened and we've been, stuck in our homes, I'm going, you know what? This is really God's work, is to explore the truth, to discover the truth, and to live it, not just learn about it, but to live it. And yeah, I feel like makes more sense that a day where I don't do a video. And yeah, I didn't do a video today. I just did a rehearsal. But the days where I'm able to um, find these nuggets of gold and cover some chapters in the scriptures and the Word of Yah, it really is a day where I spent the day well. Like that was a good use of a day of 24 hours. Um, okay, that's all I have to say. I feel like it's like journals. These are like video blogs and vlogs. They're like video journals. So pretty therapeutic, gotta admit. I think it's like 2 a.m. I don't know what time it is. Oh, it's 2:42. Yikes. Okay. All right. This is like a 2-hour stream. Great. Lovely. The people who in dark